Thank you very much for being here. As you know, we are going to talk about Victorian Scottish jewelry, and this is one of my very favorite topics. But we would be remiss not to at least cover off a little bit about the Victorian period before we begin. So, the Victorian era spanned from 1837 to 1901, and this started with Victoria's reign, and it ended with her death in 1901. And the Victorian era is actually broken into three different periods. There is the early Romantic, which began with her reign, and it ended with her husband's death. And then we went into the Middle Grand period, which is the period from his death to roughly 1885. And during that period, there were a lot of changes in society. Electricity came about. Women were really supporting through the war effort and having to take on jobs. And then the late or aesthetic period was from 1885 to 1901. So we are going to focus mostly on the Romantic period today. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on all these comments. Thank you so much. You are all very sweet. It is good to see you. Now, the Romantic period motifs and the Scottish motifs that we're going to talk about are some of the predominant motifs that you're going to see in the area. So that's crosses, clovers, arrows, lovers' knots. There were a lot of things happening in society at the time that impacted jewelry and fashion as well. So there were archaeological expeditions that were unearthing all sorts of new treasures, and we do have some revivals, which is a topic for another day. We had France's presence in Algeria that brought about a lot of tassels and knots and other motifs of that sort. And we have the love affair between Victoria and Albert in Scotland. And that is really what we're going to talk about. Welcome all. So we will begin by talking about Queen Victoria. Without talking about her and Albert's relationship and how they sort of fell in love with Scotland, it would be very difficult to explain to you how Scottish jewelry became so popular. So let's jump right in and we will chat about them. So Queen Victoria and Prince Albert met for the first time when they were 16 years old. And there was long thought to be maybe some sort of relationship that would be created between them, because that really is how these marriages were arranged during those days. But it wasn't certain whether or not they were going to hit it off. They first met when she was 16, and then again in 1838. But they didn't immediately hit it off in the same way, because Victoria was a little bit of a socialite and Albert was a little bit more structured, focusing on his business and hunting, whereas she liked parties and liked to go out. Here we've got a beautiful image of her as the monarch wearing her crown, looking quite royal. And next we'll take a look at Prince Albert, looking like quite a dashing military man indeed here. Now, they did sort of find each other again in 1839. And during 5 whirlwind days of wining and dining, they sort of fell a little bit more into favor with each other, which made everyone very, very happy. Now, because Victoria was the queen, he was never going to propose. This was her duty. She needed to do it. And so she summoned him to a room known as the Blue Room in her castle, and she proposed marriage. He accepted, and the rest is a story that goes down in history. For some of you who are wondering, who did decide on her engagement ring? Because her engagement ring is synonymous with a very precious jewel that, the snake symbolism everybody thinks about when they think about Victorian rings. It was Prince Albert himself. The snake motif stands for everlasting or eternal love. And it was very popular in those days to not use a diamond, but rather to use one's birthstone. So there's an emerald set in the head of this serpent, 2 ruby eyes. And as was common with a lot of sentimental jewelry, there's also the hair that is in there as well. So there we have it. She was a bit of a trendsetter too. So when it came time for that royal wedding, royal women usually wore their very best dress regardless of what color it may be, and hers happened to be white. And she actually kicked off sort of this trend to have white wedding dresses. And here we have it, that royal wedding that took place in 1840 after their whirlwind romance. all happened seemingly very quickly, but this was very much something that she decided to orchestrate so that she wasn't going to be under her mother's thumb for quite so long. The first time that they went to Scotland was in the 1840s. Now, they went around and they viewed many beautiful parts of the country, met with many of the different clans, and fell in love with the countryside. They swore that they were going to go back another time and even have a second home there. Now, when she was there, she was shown the brooch of Lorne by the MacDougall clan, and she was so taken by it that Prince Philip in 1842 designed a replica brooch for her and presented it to her. We've got another couple photos for you, well, I should say paintings. This is what is said to be Albert's most favorite painting of Victoria, done by Franz Winterhalter, and this is in 1843 after their second child was born. And what is really interesting is that when they decided that they were going to go back, they ended up leasing a property sight unseen, and they chose Balmoral in 1848. They continued to use it, they leased the land, and in 1853, they purchased and rebuilt it. And with that, she installed the cornerstone herself, taking a glass bottle and coins from that year from all of her realms, and it was set into the new building that is known today. Now, interestingly, things do come full circle, as one of her daughters, Princess Louise, ended up marrying the Marquis of Lorne. And when they were married, as was common in the times, the royal jewels and gifts were documented and put in the papers, drawings done of them. And as you can see in the top right-hand corner, the brooch of Lorne was something that was presented to her from the family. Very exciting. And we do have here a picture of that magical brooch of Lorne, said to have been taken from Robert the Bruce, and it did finally make its way into the family, which is really interesting. Now, we know that Scotland is a wonderful country full of riches. There's agate, pearls, even sapphires. Many, many different minerals are there. And that is in part just because of the sort of geography of it and how the earth was formed. And we are today going to look at many beautiful pieces from my collection. This is a quick look at the tray before we dive right in. I'm going to pause for a moment and say hello to you all again with my face, and then we will begin to look at some jewelry. Hi, thank you all very much for joining. I personally love to show some images and paintings from the time, or wood cuttings, so that you can actually see some of the things that are being spoken about. So thank you, StreamYard, for behaving and letting me display some of these pictures. Now, the first piece of jewelry that we're going to look at is this one here. So this is what is a fairly common in the terms of Scottish jewelry piece. Hello and welcome to all. This one, let me share another file with you. I'm going to first show you a video file, and then we will look at it up close. My goal is to make sure that you can see the details. So take a look at that center stone. That is a cairngorm, which is in fact essentially like a smoky quartz. It's a special quartz that is found only in Scotland. And you can see the pyramid cut stones. We have jasper, and we also have bloodstone in here, which are very common. There's engraving around the sides, and I will flip it around and show you the back. So as you can see, the pin extends out. This is quite a heavy brooch. And now that we are done playing that, we will take a look at it in person as well. So this one does have a safety too, a nice safety chain because it is heavy. And here you have it. Often you can find these that have a glass cab. They're not always the cairngorm. Sometimes you can find them with citrines. But I thought this one is a great way to show you how the different pieces were showcased. Now, Scottish jewelry was around for a very long time. It was often utilitarian, used for kilts or for cloaks and for clothing and to keep them on. There we go. See, I think the embedded video actually gives you a little bit of a better view. The next piece is also very typical, and it has a lot of the symbolism that you come to expect when you think about Scottish jewelry. And here we have it. Let's give you a preview before I show. We have a horseshoe, again, appropriate for the Romantic period and the motifs, set with two thistles. We've got, again, sort of that cairngorm stone and an amethyst. Now, trick is this one was actually made in London, and we're going to talk about that. When Albert and Victoria were touring around, many drawings and paintings were sent back and were published in the papers. And as the crowds saw what the royals were wearing, they gravitated to that fashion. So there became this demand for Scottish jewelry, and that's kind of how it became so prevalent. So there you can see the hallmarks. They are a little bit partial. We've got a maker, and we'll talk a little bit more about hallmarks later. But that does show you another very typical piece. Again, this one's a little bit later than the first. It's smaller in stature, and again, it is made in England. And you can see some of the details. Great. Again, we have more of the same stones too. So we have the red jasper, and then we have the bloodstone all around. I'll flip it around. For what it's worth, I think the details are better in those embedded videos. Now, because it was so popular in England to follow the fashion of the royals, many of the jewelers in England began making pieces too. And they did their best to emulate the materials, even import the materials, and create pieces that would match what would be found truly in Scotland too. So the next piece that I'm going to show you is a very large brooch. This one is definitely early Romantic period. Well, not too early. I would say sort of mid-Romantic period, because it is made in England, as you're going to see. So allow me to share with you another video file. And you'll see that this one is large and in charge. I'll show you next in person, but this is almost a specimen brooch where you can see all different types of agate that are held in silver. And as we flip it around, you'll see that it is very clearly marked for silver and England. Let's take a look. There we go. We zoom in. Made in England at the top. I love the construction. Often these agates were set by putting them on a backing of slate. Now let's remove this from the stream and show you the piece in person. So when I say large and in charge, this is what I'm talking about. On a shirt, it would be very big. This really would be meant to hold a cloak closed. It is very big and heavy piece, probably not even appropriate for a kilt, not the right size. So this gives you an idea of another of the common motifs that you can find. So keep your eyes open when you're antiquing. You may find pieces like this because obviously when something becomes popular during a period, many examples are made. Now, next up, I'm going to show you some pieces that, yes, they really are lovely earthly colors. You are so right, Sue. Hi, everyone. The next one I'm going to show you is some Montrose agate. And Montrose agate is from Montrose. And I am going to first give you the quick preview. There we go. So you may have seen these two images from the preview. We have a brooch here and also a bracelet, and give me one more moment to share a video with you. First, we will look at the very large brooch. Here we have it. As you can see, it is basically created of several panels of this Montrose agate. There is a buckle detail on the side, and it is meant to replicate the order of the garter and buckle, which is one of the most important sort of chivalric orders. And here's the back where you can see the original C-clasp, and it extends well past the end. Now this one I believe to be quite early. I'm going to remove this and show it to you in person. Here we have it. This is the most heavy of all of the pieces that I have, and it weighs in over about 50 grams. It is quite substantial. It would do a great job of holding a cloak. You can see that there's some bending in the pin where likely it did in fact hold a cloak. And Montrose agate, not to be sort of mistaken for that lace agate that you can see, is a little bit more blue and gray. Now, another example is the bracelet. So I will share that video with you so that you can see it up close. Here we are. Now, this one has the trefoil motif, which was very popular. Many Celtic elements were included in Scottish jewelry. I love that buckle style too. I know there's a few of you in the chat that quite enjoy buckle style. Again, the back of that center panel does have a piece of that slate that holds it all together. And again, it is in silver. So let's show you this one. Now, these bracelets, if you can find them, are highly, highly collectible. And if you can snap them up, I recommend that you do. Finding them, they're priced all over the map. If you find a true antique piece, you can expect to pay upwards of $200, often even up to $1,000. They're very, very expensive. Now, I love these center agates that are just varying colors. And of course, there's some red jasper in here too. Little details. And again, we'll show the back. There you have it. Now, let's talk a little bit about those utilitarian pieces as well. Kilt pins were something that definitely were worn because kilts were worn. And so here are two examples that I found. Now, these sisters did not come to me together. It was actually by coincidence that I was able to pick both of them up. So let's take a look at them. Here we go. Take a look carefully at the engraving. In the later aesthetic period, you have a more delicate kind of floral engraving, and often you see motifs of flowers or cranes, whereas this is a little bit more stylized. So this is earlier than the aesthetic period, which is the latest Victorian period. I would say this is probably late Romantic to early Grand. And here's the back. Again, we've got that C-clasp tube hinge. Wonderful pieces. So both of the ones that I managed to collect came to me from the good old US of A. And I found them actually just within a couple of months apart. Here we have them, sisters, one smaller than the other. But they almost remind me of candies, which is why I love photographing them with candies. And again, they're in silver. They would do a beautiful job of holding kilt up. Yes, indeed. It is sort of that desire to create that family of jewels. Okay. Now, often people think of citrines as well when they think of Scotland. So I am going to share a piece with you that I've had for a little while, and I've been sort of authenticating. It came in its original case that was completely blank, but it has all of the hallmarks of your typical Victorian and also potentially Scottish jewelry too. So without further ado, I'm going to share another video file. This is one of my favorites. It is a high carat gold brooch with a very large citrine and some pale blue enamel and even lighter blue enamel. So it almost comes across white on the screen, but this is that knot motif that we were talking about with the citrine. So I do love this piece, again with a very, very long hinge. We'll flip it around, show you the backside. I do indeed have a grouse-foot. I did not bring it with me today. It is actually in my other jewelry box in my closet. So there we have it again. And this one has a little hoop. Now, it doesn't look like it's for safety, which makes me wonder if perhaps someone wore this beauty as a pendant. So allow me to remove that and show you up close and personal. So this is one that I love to wear to work. It is a beautiful, bright, sunshiny citrine. Definitely Victorian period, and I will continue my research to see if I can find any information on a maker in catalogs. It really is to die for. This one came from an estate in Maine, and I was amazed at the condition of everything. It is almost untouched. It must have been received as a gift and put away. Absolutely wonderful pieces. Now I have another citrine to show you. This one is small but mighty. So allow me to share take a look at the old cut in this one. The cullet has been lopped off. If I can, there we go, try and angle it for you. So this is another video taken on my balcony. The color of this one is just phenomenal. It almost looks like it should be a cairngorm. And here we have it. I do love citrine, and I love it when they're deep and dark or pale yellow. I'm not biased. It is really hard to see all of the details. I'm glad I've got those embedded videos for you. And this one is also in silver. So these are fascinating pieces. Now this one I believe to be a little bit later because it's smaller in stature. And I do have a smaller one to share with you too. It is so saturated. The next one I have, a tiny little brooch, and we know that this is from the later aesthetic period where people began to have time for leisure activities and needed smaller jewelry that wouldn't tear holes in their lighter fabrics. We have an agate, and I am going to share this one. This one is set in 10 karat gold. I'm going to share a video with you so that you can see the details. Here we have it. Now you can see the engraving, and it is a little bit more floral, which is why I believe this one is later aesthetic period. Wonderful agate. Love the colors on this. And last, I am going to share with you, well, not last, I should say last in this batch. I'm going to share with you something really special that my twin sister found for me when she was thrifting. She knows that I absolutely adore everything Scottish jewelry. And this is not a Victorian piece. It is in fact actually earlier than being a Victorian piece. So let's share the video file for this one. It is Georgian, and it is hallmarked for 1835 with the most beautiful blue chalcedony. It's got a thistle motif all the way around it, and this one needed to be photographed outside where the light could hit it. Don't worry about being late. You are welcome to be here and to stay for as long or as little as you like. You can always play it back. And you can see at the top, it says Iona, and there are some hallmarks for, we've got Scotland, technically it's Edinburgh, in 1835. So that makes it pre-Victorian. This is one of my very favorite pieces. Almost matches my shirt. I was so amazed that my sister found it, and it was so generous of her to send it to me. Came from a shop that did not know what they had. It really is perfection. I wish I could show it to you with some glowing light behind. It's just so amazing. When I saw it, I initially was like, can this be real? That is the joy of being on the hunt and collecting jewelry. Welcome all. So good to see you. All right. Now, alongside with all of this jewelry, which is true Victorian period, there was a company called Miracle that was founded in 1946 in Britain so that they could create essentially replicas of Scottish pieces. And these pieces, because they're still popular today, can easily be found. And I want to share one of those with you. Now, this one is a Miracle brooch. They had a couple of different lines going. They had a line that used gemstones and silver as well as glass and pewter. And this is an example of their glass and pewter line. So we have glass that is made very carefully to emulate those wonderful stones of Scotland, all in pewter. Beautiful piece. Now their backs tend to have these sort of striations and markings and are a little bit clumsier. But they always referred to catalogs to try and create pieces that really matched true antique pieces. And now we're going to play a little bit of a game. So you've learned a few things now. I think you can identify Montrose agate. We are going to look at 3 different pieces. I'm going to play a video for you, and then I'm going to put up a little poster that has an A, B, or C choice. And I am going to ask you all to tell me which one you think is a true piece of Victorian Scottish jewelry. So here is the video file. I won't give you any hints, but I will show you both front and back. This is piece A. Yes, Kim, they are absolutely wonderful. This is piece B. Take you in a little closer and we'll flip you around. And then we will have piece C. And of course, we will flip you around so that you can see piece C. Quiz time. So here we have it. A, B, or C. Which do you think is the true antique Victorian Scottish brooch? I'll give you all a moment and then I will reveal what they are. And thank you for playing along. All right. I am going to take down this. Feel free to get that answer in. I know there's a little bit of a lag. I'm learning that because I can still see what I've got posted up, as well as some of the comments rolling in. We'll take a look at them together one at a time. This was piece A. And piece A is silver and it is gemstones. However, this is lace agate. It is not Montrose agate, and it is a piece made by Miracle. We're going to jump ahead to piece C. Also a piece made by Miracle. And this one is in fact a pewter as well as a glass piece. And it looks absolutely stunning. It's almost prettier in some ways than Montrose agate. I do love my glass, as you all know, but it is not the antique Victorian piece. And for all those of you who guessed B, you are correct. This one is indeed a true Victorian antique piece with Montrose agate. Nice closed back, the original C-clasp setting that extends nice and far. Yes, a certificate of completion. Congratulations to all of you who got it right. Now you've got something else to hunt for when you go antiquing. And I did want to give you just a quick overview of one more piece, which is one of my favorites. Let me play a video for you. Now, this is another piece that is made in Britain. And I do love my citrines, as you're going to learn. Here we have it. This one's another, a large and in-charge citrine that is set beautifully. And you're getting a peek of the hallmarks on the back right now, and that is what we're going to take a look at. Welcome all, good to see you. But first we need to, do the full turn and get the full effect of that citrine. So let me remove that. I'm going to hold it up for a second. I don't think I'm going to be able to show you the hallmarks with this camera, so we're going to instead go right to this. The anatomy of the hallmark of this pin. So we've got a maker, an assay office, finest mark, and also a date. And this is going to tell us exactly who made this and when. And then we'll take a look at the clasp because it's a little bit unique. So first up, JC and S. This is Joseph Cook and Son. I like to use, there's different, obviously, dictionaries that you can buy for makers and hallmarks, but the Lang University website is really helpful. There's quite a good catalog of makers, and I was able to find this information there. Next up, we have our assay office. So there is an anchor, and as you can see in the tiny little screenshot that I included, you can see that anchor. It is made in Birmingham. Now, before we jump into the date, actually, we're going to jump to purity first. Purity is silver. So you can see the yellow box on that middle piece is for silver. And then the last piece is date. But before we jump ahead, I would love for some of you to guess, how old do you think this piece is? And I'm going to hold it up one more time. We'll remove it. It's sort of an eternal style in its own way. I'll show you for size. This is a very large citrine. Go ahead and put a guess in. There's no penalty if you get it wrong. You can even guess by, you can choose period or decade. Take a guess. but one for 1890s. And this is why it's important to learn to read hallmarks and to learn what details were created when, to understand different periods, 1880s, 1930s, because all of that goes a long way in teaching you about your jewelry. And a little fun fact about citrines, they were not enhanced with heat, in antique times. They truly were yellow, but most recently, and sort of in the last 50 to 70 years, they have been treated more in order to give them a brighter yellow color. So I love finding antique citrines or older citrines, and then I hang on to them. All right, we have a few guesses, and I am now going to give you the reveal. So this little mark is for 1913. We have ourselves a Joseph Cook and Sons brooch made of silver from 1913. Thank you very, very much for playing along. That was a lot of fun. And I am going to show you the clasp because it is a very unusual sort of safety style clasp. When I first got it, I thought that I was supposed to pull this to one side or the other. And that is not the way this works. It actually flips up, and there we go, and in, and it holds it in place. So this is fun little back. Thank you all so much for playing along with that one. It was a lot of fun. The last piece that I'm going to show you that I do not have a video of is a piece of banded agate, because we would be remiss to be talking about Scottish jewelry and not show a piece of banded agate. This is a bar brooch. I'm going to try and hold it straight. Very cool clasp. And when you see those clasps now, you'll be able to date them to roughly the Edwardian period. There we have it. Now, these are kind of translucent. They're wonderful little cabs. There are no marks on this, it's silver. But this one is also Edwardian period. If you can see the details, which I don't think you can. Wonderful.